A commonly cited statistic is that 1 in 5 healthcare workers have left their job at some point since the start of the pandemic. And for the most part, these folks haven't just left their job. They've left healthcare, and they're not coming back. Whenever there is a mass exodus from a company or from an industry, the reason, it's rarely because of money. It usually stems from toxic workplace culture. Whether that's from overt or unconscious bias or discrimination, or employees being forced to work beyond their capacity and burning out, at the root, poor communication skills. At Step Into Your Moxie, we are obsessed with vocal empowerment. That ability for every employee, from executive down to entry level, to be able to walk into any room, into any conversation, and onto any stage, and speak up for themselves, for the ideas and issues and people that matter to them and to their companies, and consistently and ethically call people to take action. We believe that there's almost no conversation that can't be had if that conversation infuses candor with kindness. Yet too many conversations privilege one at the expense of the other, and that's hurting us. In healthcare, that's hurting you. It's hurting you in terms of people, as you have to rehire administrators and physicians and staff. It's hurting you in terms of patients who go elsewhere for their medical care and leave scathing reviews on their way out. And of course, it's hurting you in terms of money. It's hurting you as you have to recruit and retrain new employees. It's hurting you in terms of inefficiencies, mistakes, sometimes even lawsuits. And above all, it's hurting you because you keep recreating a culture where poor communication and poor mental health keep on happening. In my first career, I worked in the educational theater sector where, since it was the nonprofit world, I wore a lot of hats. And one of those hats was as a facilitator. And as a facilitator, I used to use a lot of role play with the populations I worked with: educators, social workers, other nonprofit professionals. And we would use role play as a tool to help folks find their words and the confidence to use them in a variety of conversations. At Step Into Your Moxie, role play has continued to be a pivotal tool. And one of the things we have found over the last nearly 2 decades of doing this work is, irrespective of somebody's title or experience, there are many situations where uncomfortable, if not downright debilitating, sensation emerges when navigating through high stakes, or what we prefer to call daring conversations. And if we don't talk about that sensation, and more importantly, learn how to play nicely with it, daring conversations, they don't happen. This was something that I learned personally and profoundly when I was diagnosed with cancer. The first surgeon who I saw shortly after my diagnosis was adamant that I get a very particular type of surgery. When I asked some questions, I was met with "I am the decider. You will get the surgery that I recommend. I am the best in the state." I'm embarrassed to admit that I left that appointment with a surgical date. But over the next few weeks, as that surgical date approached, my insides went wild. I replayed that conversation in my head and what I didn't say over and over and over again. I had a lot of anxiety, even a couple of panic attacks. And perhaps the worst part was at night, when I had the same recurring nightmare, being transported back to a traumatic incident from my childhood, where the surgeon was now playing the role of perpetrator. I knew that if I didn't feel safe, even with all of my tools to speak up, I wasn't going to feel safe putting my life in that surgeon's hands. So I didn't. I got a second opinion, and I wound up traveling across the country for my treatment. I knew I had found the right surgical home When, during a telemedicine visit before, my new surgeon asked me her questions, really wanting to understand what success looked like for me beyond a medical cure. She gave me space to ask her my questions, never making me feel like I was a burden, never giving me rise for embarrassment or shame. It was shared decision-making at its finest. And the way that I was treated by this surgeon, it wasn't just the right or the nice thing to do. It paid off for her in her facility. For over the last few years, I have sent more patients than I have fingers to count there, including my own mom. What would have to happen in your organization to create the space for every client or patient who walks through your doors to experience the psychological safety to ask questions at every phase of their journey with you? What would have to happen in your organization to truly fuse exceptional medical care with exceptional people care? And what do you suspect would shift for you as a leader and for all of your staff if everybody possessed the mindset as well as the skill set to be able to speak up for themselves, for colleagues, and of course, for patients? When we think about innovation, we often think about technology, engineering, or invention. But at its root, innovation can actually be really simple. It's about spotting a problem and identifying a new, often unorthodox, and highly effective method to solve it once and for all. The way that the vast majority of medical practices or healthcare organizations do communication by default or as an afterthought. Spoiler alert, it's not working. It is time to innovate how we do communication in healthcare. And that is not just an opportunity, it's a responsibility. It is time to create speak-up healthcare cultures that minimize financial loss, that boost safety, and that increase physical as well as mental health and well-being for patients, for staff, and above all, for you as a leader.